functioning since 2015.
Yes. Yes.
Other societies have not started such groups or voluntary associations.
I think the Indian Physics Association has a group like this, Women in Physics group, but that's more recent than WGG. Others, I'm not sure. I hope Prajwal will join today because she started the one in the Indian Physics Association. So
I see.
how is it in JNU? I mean, do you have do you have any gender specific kind of fora or place where you can actually have these kind of talks, or is it a group or
We can we have an informal group, but nothing like this with regular lectures. It's called Feminist Faculty Collective, was set up by a colleague.
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah.
Fora or place where you can actually have these kind of talks, or
we are live.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nothing like this with regular lectures. There's an echo, I think. It was set up by a colleague.
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah.
Yeah, that echo thing, I think we sorted out last time, so hopefully.
Yeah, I should not open it on my same system as this. So I'm opening it from my phone, but I just wanted to say we are live now.
Yeah, okay.
We can't just chat.
Yes. Yeah, maybe after the lecture we can kind of. Yeah. Okay. Let me see if I can gather an audience. One second.
Preeti? Hello? Preeti?
Yeah, hi.
Yeah. Shall we start?
I think do you want to wait for a minute?
Yeah, sure.
Maybe let some more people join. Arunima, hi. We can join. We can start now, I think.
Yeah. So good afternoon and a warm welcome to the 15th Annamani lecture by Professor V. Sujatha. The Annamani lecture series is a part of the ongoing effort by the Working Group for Gender Equity, WGGE, of the Astronomical Society of India, ASI, for increasing gender sensitization in the astronomy community in India. Annamani, after whom this lecture series is based, was a pioneering Indian physicist and a meteorologist who carried out path-breaking research in the 1950s in India against all odds. After completing her undergraduate degree in physics from Presidency College, Madras, she undertook research at the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. She worked with C.V. Raman on the spectroscopy of diamonds and rubies. However, she was not granted a PhD degree by Madras University on the pretext that she did not have a master's degree, ignoring the fact that she had obtained a scholarship for graduate studies on the basis of her undergraduate degree. She then took up an internship to study physics at Imperial College, London, but ended up specializing in meteorological instrumentation. She returned to India in 1948 and joined the Indian Meteorological Department at Pune. In 1976, she retired as the Deputy Director General of IND and subsequently returned to the Raman Research Institute as a visiting professor for several years. During her career as a meteorologist, Annamani helped in setting up instruments for studying the ozone layer and wind energy, as well as a millimeter wave telescope at Nandi Hills to study solar radiation. She also wrote 2 books on solar radiation. The first Annamani lecture was given by Professor Rama Govindarajan on 22nd April 2016. Today, we have Professor V. Sujatha to deliver the 15th Annamani lecture. A few words about the speaker. Professor V. Sujatha is a professor at the Center for the Study of Social Systems, School of Social Sciences, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. She specializes in the fields of sociology of knowledge and sociology of health and medicine. Her research focuses on the dynamic interface between knowledge, social structure, and state policy. Her publications include the books Health by the People, 2003, Medical Pluralism in Contemporary India, co-editor Lina Abraham, 2012, Sociology of Health and Medicine, New Perspectives, 2014, and Global Capital and Social Difference, 2020, apart from research articles in referred journals and in Tamil intellectual and writings in Tamil intellectual journals. She has been a visiting professor at the Institute for Sociology, University of Freiburg, and the South Asia Institute at Heidelberg in Germany, Flasco in Argentina, and the University of Pompeu Fabra in Spain. She received the UGC DAD Fellowship for Fieldwork in Germany and the ICSSR NIHSS Fellowship for Research at the University of Cape Town, South Africa. Presently, she is working on social inequality and access to medicine in rural Madhya Pradesh, with a focus on the role of unqualified medical practitioners in healthcare in India, on which she has submitted a book-length report to the Indian Council of Social Science Research, ICSSR, in 2022. I now formally invite Professor Sujatha to deliver today's talk. Professor Sujatha.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arunima, for the introduction, and thanks to the women's group, the Gender Equity Group of the Indian Astronomical Society. It's so heartening to know the effort of this group in bringing issues relating to gender and science. And I'm very happy to be a part of this effort and to share some of my thoughts on this subject. It's a very well-researched subject. And the title of my presentation today is Science, Society and Culture. I shall be sharing my screen. I have some presentation to share. Give me a minute, please. Are you able to see the screen?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So, yes. So the Science, Society and Culture, International Comparisons of Gender Asymmetries in Science and Technology. That's the title of my presentation. There's a whole a lot of work on women and science, gender and science by feminists for almost 2-3 decades. And then there's a lot of work by advocacy groups and institutions like World Economic Forum, UNESCO, UNICEF, on women's participation in science. And you have voluntary groups and NGOs like Bias Watch also generating a lot of data. So this is a well-researched field. You have concepts like leaky pipeline, glass ceiling, that you might be hearing quite often. So now,
Yeah, I think sometimes this happens if it stays too long on one slide. So it will move a little slowly.
I see.
Yeah.
Continue to talk. So basically, there are 3 dimensions to the kind of literature that is being published on women and science and women's participation in science. First one is that talks about women's entry, participation in science, and their progress and upward mobility within science institutions. Second set of work, if you see, it looks at organizational issues, work culture and discrimination or other issues within institutions and organizations. And the third set of issues, most interesting and exciting, mostly brought to the table by the feminists, are issues about how women scientists have examined clinical trials or the methods of science, the actual methods of science, especially with regard to experimental sciences. And they have brought to light the faulty experimental designs, which could have led to biased results, especially in human genetics on gender. So you have the third set of articles and writings that pertain to the methods of science. I'll just see if the slide is moving. If not, I will have to do an extempore thing. Should I stop sharing and start?
Yeah.
Can you reshare?
It's not allowing me to do it.
Yeah, sometimes this happens.
So, okay, doesn't. Just give me 1 minute, if not.
I think you have to click on the presentation. Maybe that can help on your presentation.
Yes.
Just put the cursor there and click.
Okay. Now you can see the 3 dimensions to gender asymmetry.
Not yet.
Are you not able to see?
No. Maybe you can reshare, as Vicky said. Maybe that can help. I will do that for you. You stop sharing. Yeah, you please reshare once more. I have stopped it on your behalf. Now you can share once more.
I don't see my, oh, yeah. So
I think it may also help if you don't do the full screen and just have like slides on the side and like, you know, the way when you first opened it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yes,
like this. Yeah, that may
Yes.
happen, work better. Yeah.
yes. So I was here. I just mentioned that the large volume of literature on women and science could broadly be classified under three dimensions, three kinds of work. First is the women's participation and presence. Second is the work culture of science institutions. And third is gender in the methods and results of science. Though you will find a lot more data and material on the first aspect, namely how many women are entering, how many earn doctorates, how many are employed, and so on and so forth. That's the most studied aspect. But so I will also be focusing in this presentation on the first aspect more. But if you ask me what is it new that you're going to tell us that has not been said earlier, kind of writings on women's participation, they are generally presented as country-wise engagements. There's there is internal kind of an understanding, and then everybody finds there's a glass ceiling or a leaky pipeline. But I think a comparative perspective, comparing across countries, will yields a better perspective and insight, and it directs us to the patterns of asymmetry. It's not that in any place asymmetries are less, but the patterns are different, and they lead us to generative mechanisms for these asymmetries. So I revisited the same data that's being looked at by women's studies and a whole lot of other people, and I thought that a comparative perspective will give us certain explanatory mechanisms. So that is what this presentation is about. Of course, I will be touching upon the other two dimensions and end with a few initiatives to address the inequality. Now, the most commonly used term is the glass ceiling. But my argument is that the glass ceiling is not identical across societies. If you compare the participation of women in science and technology across countries, it shows intriguing variations. Industrially advanced countries, which have great civic liberties for women, where the women's workforce participation is very high, such as Sweden, Germany, France, Luxembourg, and Switzerland, surprisingly, they are not doing better in women's enrollment and educational attainment in STEM careers, that is science, technology, engineering, and medicine. And with Catholic countries within Europe, if you look at Portugal, Italy, or Muslim majority countries like Albania, Malaysia, and the socialist countries like Latvia and Bulgaria. This is also true of countries like India, which seem to be doing well in terms of enrollment and postgraduate and doctoral attainments in STEM subjects. But another thing that we notice is when I came to the subject 10 years ago and I reviewed the literature now, I noticed that there is a shift. There is a recent and drastic improvement in enrollments in the West and an inertia in India at a higher level. I'll come to it very soon. So basically, in this presentation, I would like to deal with the participation of women in science through 5 moments in their career. One is enrollment in a STEM degree. What are the figures? Let's look at the doctorate. How many earn doctorates? How many progress to tenured jobs? How many reach leadership positions? And how many secure coveted awards? I also want to draw your attention to the case of math and theoretical physics, which I'll be pointing out in the data. Normally, math and physics are considered male bastions in the West. It's not so in Asia. They also present to us interesting test cases because one of the reasons for lower participation of women in science is attributed to lower funding for labs and lab-based projects. So if you take math and theoretical physics as something not involving lab work, then it should be better there. So, but that is not the case. In fact, compared to the laboratory sciences and experimental sciences, you find fewer women in math and theoretical physics. So, and this is especially true of the West. And this tells us something about the underlying mechanisms. So, so this is the whole, let me go to the previous slide. So since I'll be sharing some data about these 5 levels, like I mentioned to you, my overall argument is to show that industrially advanced countries do not necessarily do better in terms of all the at least the first 3 parameters. There is a recent change due to advocacy and activism, which also gives us some hope as to the path that should be followed in this part of the world. So now, if you look at entry of women in science and technology, enrollment is a critical indicator of self-perception. If women are not enrolling in undergraduate degrees in certain subjects, we have not even reached the stage of institutional discrimination. That means there is some mental barrier or there is a block by which women are avoiding these fields. So if you see entry of women in math and physics at the undergraduate level was quite low in US and Europe almost until 2002. Whereas Asian migrants in the US and in South Africa, they enroll more in math and physics than white women. This data is available also in my earlier writings. If you look at the data prior to 2000, you find that Germany had 12% undergraduate enrollment of women in mathematics and natural sciences and 7.3% in engineering. By contrast, if you look at Saudi Arabia, which is a Muslim majority country and which is known to have placed several restrictions on women, is showing 55.5% women enrollment in science at the undergraduate level and 45% of doctorate degrees in science and technology. So, until 2000, there is this picture. Also in India, you have information that as early as 1997, 34.17% enrollment of women was found in pure sciences and 32% only for physics. At the comparable figures at this time was 6 to 10% in Europe. That means only this 6 to 10% women could be found in the undergraduate courses in math and physics in Europe. In India, some southern states like Kerala, Punjab, Kerala and Tamil Nadu and Punjab, which were seeing rapid enrollment rates, had 65% women to 50% in Tamil Nadu in STEM courses. And Bihar and UP had the lowest enrollment of girls in STEM courses. Now, if you look at the engineering class in the US, only 16% of the engineering class consisted of women in 2005. And if you look at the male to female student ratio, it was 1.96 in the US, 1.96 in India, whereas it was 4.96 in the US. So authors looking at this, these kind of figures are pointing to a demographic inertia in the US in the period between 1970 and 2000, where the enrollment of girls in STEM was abysmally low. But even at this stage, India was doing better in the 90s. But look at the figures now. This is the most recent figure in 2019. I have tried to collate them for the similar time periods. And so you can see in biological science, you can see United States is doing well. I also put Brazil there. Math and this is undergraduate enrollment, 42%. But if you look at computer science and engineering, they are low in other countries. Whereas in India, it is 42%. India is probably the only country in most of the world to have such a high enrollment of girls in computer science. And physics, these figures are same because the latest iShare data does not give us the breakup it says natural sciences, which include math and biological sciences. So I have given you the same figure. In Brazil, it is almost 50% there. If you look at the figures in some of the Gulf countries, 60% of the engineering degrees are earned by women, is what the National Geographic says. So we get, these are the improved figures. That means that the undergraduate enrollment in the US and UK now has drastically improved. But let's see how it goes. But if you look at the postgraduate enrollment data, it falls in the rest of the countries. So Eurostat data shows for Germany that there is 0.7% enrollment in PG math. It is 3.6 for math, physics, and life sciences. And in France, it is 5.3% enrollment of girls in a postgraduate degree in math, physics, and life sciences. But the enrollments are improving in US and Europe at the undergrad level. They are likely to improve at PG, but at the moment they are lower. So the leaky pipeline designation label suits those countries better. If you look at the latest figure of the All India Studies Higher Education Survey, it shows that the enrollment of women in science and engineering is equal in PG courses. Almost, it varies, average is equal. In private universities and institutes of national importance, such as the IITs, they have a far lower ratio of women, but the state and central universities have 45 to 50% ratio, depending on the region, of women in STEM courses at the postgraduate level. Also of great interest to us here is the fact that female enrollment is similar across social categories, whether it is the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, and OBC, and general. It is not that any one particular category has lower, the patterns are almost similar. They have similar enrollment patterns in the disciplines, and you don't find there is any shortfall. So the proportion and patterns are almost same. So we have to accept what Chandra and Godbole have suggested, that in India, you don't find a leaky pipeline. There is a postdoctoral outflux. The exit happens at a much later stage, unlike these developed countries where the leaky pipeline metaphor applies. So this has been characterized by scholars like Chanana as slow spiral upward movement. That is the career progress movement, upward mobility of women in the Indian academy it's not static. There is a movement, but it is slow spiral upward movement. And now there's a recent book by the title A Braided River, brought about by UNESCO, which says that it is like a flow of a river, but with many braids joining, hindering, and deterring, and still the river is meandering itself through these barriers. So now if you look at the figures for doctorate, if you EU countries, EU candidate countries like Albania, which is again a Muslim majority country, Georgia, Israel, and Turkey, have 55% doctorates in STEM disciplines. The latest data in the Indian case is there are 34.79 doctorates in engineering, 47 doctorate percent, 6.6% doctorates in basic sciences, and 35.64 doctorates in medicine have been earned by women. Again, if we pay attention to math, you will find that the women obtaining doctorates in math in the US remains 29%, though the overall doctorates are 42% in STEM degrees. In India, there are 44.6% of the doctorates in math are earned by women. Now, this is the latest data from the SHE survey of the European Commission. You can see Bulgaria is leading at all levels, 65% of PhDs in natural sciences. They are there in engineering and ICT as well. Latvia is also doing well. Argentina also has very good figures, 65% degrees by women, whereas Germany is 41%, France is 39%, UK is 47%, China is 42%. India, it shows 39%, though the Indian figures say it is above 40%, it's around 42%. And here again, you can say in the ICT, you will see that India has more doctorates of women earning doctorates in information and communication technology, which is different from all the other countries. So if we quickly move to tenured positions, I hope you can see. I have on the right, you can see women in grade A positions in natural sciences in Europe. Grade A positions are equivalent to full professorships. So if you see how many, with so many doctorates, how many have managed to become full professors, you have the percentages to the right of Germany with 14.1. UK is better figure, has better figures with 15.6. Sweden has 16.2%, Belgium at 17%, whereas Portugal, Italy, which are Catholic countries, have 30.2%, Italy has 22.7%, and Croatia has 43%. So you can see countries like Portugal and Italy have many more women in professorial grades than these countries. They have women also at the entry level, greater numbers. On the other, look at the Indian figures. Full professors in STEM, we actually don't have that discipline-wise breakup. The earlier studies show that Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore has 8.3, Hyderabad Central University is 8%, JNU has 10%, and Delhi University has 10% in all this science discipline, with 18.2% professors only in math, women professors. So all India average is something around 15.8, which is not, given the number of doctorates earned by women, it's very small. So you can see where the block or barrier is happening. The ISHE latest data for all disciplines of number of full professors, women who are full professors, it's 24.8 in state universities, 21.6 in central universities. And there are 40% of them are college teachers, not full professors. So many women are engaged in colleges. So if you look at the figures for full professorship, you can see how it is declining. This is in contrast to the inter-academy data, which was saying that 34 to 56% of lecturers and readers in national science laboratories in early 2000, that period, the figures were quite good. Of course, it's not a full professor, it's of lecturers and readers. So you will also find that they are concentrated in the lower levels, and reaching full professorship, there is a barrier. But still, the figures are not very bad. So you'll be surprised that France as a country that has labor laws favorable to women, it has 35% women executives, it has very good creche facilities for young mothers, yet you can see the proportion of women in science and technology careers very low. On the other hand, the Malaysian information technology sector has equal proportions of men and women. You have women as university professors, and in the private sector, because this is the legacy they have from Malaysian electronic industry, which was the precursor to the information technology sector. So women have been predominant in the electronic sector. And this is a pan-Malay trend, whether it is Indian, Chinese, or Malay Muslims. So this is very interesting how France and Malaysia we contrast. So if now now that we've discussed enrollment, doctorates, and tenured positions, what could be the reason why countries with such a high industrially advanced countries with high level of women's workforce participation and with such high level of civic liberties for women should not be doing better than these countries? My argument is that it is a scientism, what I call scientism, which becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you look at, it is said that in 17th century, 14% of all astronomers in Germany were women. Today, it stands at 8%. And the reason being that with the advance of laboratory sciences, especially the findings of biology and genetics, they have been putting out facts within quotes about the cognitive inability of women to think rationally and to engage in abstract mathematical thinking. And they talk about, these kind of studies are numerous, and this leads to an entrenched bias among scientists, and it does affect the self-perception of aspiring women. And there are thousands and thousands of laboratory studies on the size of the woman's brain and or their hormonal secretions, genetic disposition, evolutionary imperative that it is the male who should be dominant, then reproductive processes, and the emotional makeup of women and their cognitive performance over the years. And these studies are also the findings are also articulated by Nobel laureates and university head like Larry Summers in the US with great confidence. Of course, he was asked to leave, but he said that he didn't say anything that was false. So this is the larger culture of positivistic science and biology, which in the popular culture leads to numerous psychometric tests. There are numerous tests they keep conducting on the mathematical inclination among school children and youngsters, and they come out with the results that girls have lower aptitude for math. That is why math is a touchy subject there. And my argument, which I've written about earlier, is that an excessive reliance on positivistic and numerical measurement of aptitude is common in the public discourses and popular writings in countries like the US and the UK. So this creates and sustains an ethos of what I refer to as entrenched scientism that is internalized by women very early in their life, culminating in self-ejection in their career. That is the reason why they don't even enroll, because from school, they are exposed to these kind of findings of science that women are less capable of abstract thinking. These ideas have existed since the Greek period. I want to clarify here that feminists like Londa Scheibinger, talk about cultures of science. A lot of feminists have criticized rationality and objectivity of science, but my criticism is not of science's rationality and objectivity as such. It is this phenomenon that I call biologism, excessive reliance on anatomical and biologistic characteristics to the exclusion of anthropological and sociological variation. Even feminists who critique science in the West, they are part of the same culture of scientism. And they, for once, though you can see some international comparison in the literature, even Scheibinger in her 1999 book has made this comparison and found Brazil and Asia to be better in enrollment. They dismiss it by saying that not taking science in the third world seriously. They don't think what is being done here is science. Or secondly, they say it could be because these are poor countries and women want to take up jobs. Therefore, they register in science courses. This is hardly true because the countries like India have very low labor force participation of women. Otherwise, though they are found in high numbers in STEM. So they have not actually paid attention to this, is what I'm trying to say about the presence of women in science, at least at the enrollment level, and that Asian women are found large numbers in math and theoretical physics. And if you look at the socialist countries, the powerful impetus to gender equality, equal opportunities, reduced influence of religion, has definitely made a difference. You can see Bulgaria, Russia also has done very well of women's participation in science and at all levels. So they, from enrollment till coveted awards, leadership positions, we'll see very soon. So scientism is, according to me, one of the biggest barriers. What about countries like India? It's not that we have a rosy picture here. I'm saying the cultural reasons or the barriers to women's upward mobility in science in countries like India is something else. It's another reason, what I call familism. See, in traditional and family-centered societies like India, it's not educational attainment for women of higher social classes. It's not prohibited totally. It's actually a status symbol. Women are encouraged to learn and engage in intellectual activities, but marriage is essential for women, and they are expected to remain within the authority of the family and caste, and not make a living of their learning. Familistic culture affects both men and women, but it affects the women disproportionately. So if you look at it, the barriers here are not beliefs about the cognitive inferiority of women. This is not the case in most religions. Most religions do think that, but do not think women are cognitively inferior, at least the Asian religions and also probably Islam. But the issue is chastity, piety, and docility. That is the foremost concern. If you look at the 19th century situation about doctors, when British women became doctors, they were criticized for being mentally incapable of doing the medical work, and they were dispatched to the colonies. Whereas the first few women doctors, they were not criticized. They were thought of being quite capable. But the fear was that they will either convert to another religion or mix with people of the other castes, or they will break the boundaries of the family and marry someone outside the caste, etc. So that is what I say between feminism and scientism, the beliefs. So even if you look at Leelavati's Daughter, which is a collection of biographies, Harkitai has also brought out a beautiful biographic collection of women scientists throughout the world. None of them, if you look at the Indian scientists, women scientists, don't say that either teachers or family members mention that they have lower intelligence than men. You don't find such things also in the public discourse. So the barrier is familism, in that they have to stay within the control of the family or boundary of the family. But familism also protects women from the competition of the labor market in India. So it's interesting that a recent survey by Niti Aayog on women in science, in this sample survey, 30% of the women who were sampled said that their marriage prospects will decide career decisions. These were young scientists. And 15 to 20% of them said that they will make their decisions about the job after a good alliance is found. And based on the location of the bridegroom, they will then choose the job. So you can see later, I will show from A Braided River, that women have a longer unexplained gap between the PhD and the first job than men. So this is just a sample survey, but it's interesting. It was done among young women scientists, and this is what they said. Now, in social science, one interesting finding also from feminist writings is that most of the women scientists throughout the world, they come from educated and urban families. You will not find first generation women. The reason being that they should already come from very well-educated families to be able to compete equally with men in STEM fields. And generally, women scientists or professionals tend to be hypergamous, which means they marry a person who is of equal qualification or more highly qualified than them. And but on the other hand, if you see, successful men are hypogamous. They marry women who are school teachers. They themselves might be scientists, but they may marry women who are slightly less educated and younger than them. And so they are able to achieve in science as well as have a family, because they are not both equally engaged in career. So in Europe and US, lately you find that they have fewer married women at high level science, or fewer women scientists in Germany. Countries like Germany opt for children. Again, the Niti Aayog study of 2016-17 suggests that 80% women scientists are married and 69% have children. This is not to say whether it's an advantage or disadvantage, but I'm just giving you a picture of the fact that marriage is very central and family is very central to the lives of Indian citizens. So what is the pattern of asymmetry here? Like I just mentioned, marriage is an inevitable major life cycle event for women in India. And generally, all the studies show that, natal and spouse and in-law support has been found by women scientists. So they generally have said that they have been fully supported, mostly supported by family members so they manage even without a creche when they had children. But at some point in the mid-career, either they themselves slow down or are required to slow down in order to facilitate the mobility of spouses if they have to choose between moving to another place, etc. Or if children are grown up, have reached 12th standard or going to college, then the women slow down mid-career. But again, the Niti Aayog report shows it's a sample study only of 991 women scientists. So we should take it with that understanding in mind, that only 80% of the 991 women scientists mentioned that they experienced a break in their career. It shows, so it's not that they may quit the job because they might be in a permanent job, but they will slow down at some point mid-career in order to accommodate other familial responsibilities. So I want to point out the difference. Whereas scientism is a factor which is internal and it could lead to self-rejection of women, familism is also internal in that we do internalize the importance of family and all that. But it is a factor in the choices made by women. It is external. The women make the choices. So this both can breed discrimination. But as I just mentioned and showed, the patterns of asymmetry that they produce are different. Familism will not lead to a break in the enrollment. It leads to actually breaks or slowing down at a slightly later stage in the career. And that is actually reflected in tenured positions that women get and them going for leadership positions. And this distinction will also help us to direct policy initiatives at the right place, because scientism, which leads to mental blocks among women to enter fields like math and physics, has to be countered by improving their self-confidence. A lot of work of this kind has been done in the US, UK, and Europe, and which is already now beginning to show in increased enrollments. In India, you have to work from the school level, but the priorities, the focus has to be slightly different. In India, as I just mentioned, cognitive inferiority is not a barrier. It is a sheer physical infrastructure is a barrier. Women's access to education, the distance from the school, type of school, safety and security for girls is abysmal. Public transport in many places is really bad. So that's a very big issue. It also gives rise to safety issues for women going for higher education or for jobs. Basic things like toilets and healthy food are not available. And an important trend that we note now, if you look at the Aisha report, is a large section of girls from the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe communities are entering the higher education sector. And but they in STEM, so that is why you find very large numbers in the STEM degrees, but they may not be progressing. They may be going into employment, and there is some intervention needed there to encourage them and support them in going into research. Another major barrier in the Indian situation is that the institutional measures against sexual harassment, bullying, and stalking of women in public places is very bad. You find that educated women who refuse men advances, acid attacks, domestic violence, etc., are growing in those states where women's participation in higher education is more. It's directly proportional. So our public places are oppressive, and that is one of the reasons. So if you look at the current figures, so it seems that there is a slump, or the figures have been static. for the past 20 years of Indian women's tenured position in STEM fields. So currently, the average is only 14% of Indian women are in full employment in STEM fields. It's lower than Malaysia and Philippines, which have 50% women in STEM jobs. In Europe, the recent data shows full professorship of women in STEM has gone up to 26.2. And Eastern European countries have reached 49 to 57% of women in science and engineering. On the other hand, since 2012, in India, the general labor force participation rate has declined for men and women. But it was considered that the service sector is better off. But it is alarmingly low in the past 5 years for women across all age groups. So earlier, it was felt that the service sector, universities, etc., were not affected by lower labor force participation of women. But it seems that this is affecting them. And recent surveys show that there is a greater gap of women between women's labor participation and men's labor participation in the younger age group of 24 and in the higher age group of 55, showing that women are not even able to enter jobs, though they might be qualifying themselves. So there is the current figures of women's participation in the labor force is really bad. It's shameful. You have 33% of women were in the workforce in 1999. Now it came down to 28.5 in 2017. In 2021, it has come down to 19%. If you look at Kenya, they have 71% women in the labor force, Bangladesh 35%, Argentina 50%, Indonesia 54%, and Iraq 11%. One of the reasons attributed to the lower participation of women in the workforce is the income effect. That is, when there is a rise in the family income, women are withdrawn from the workforce, unlike other places. Second, and more important, is that there is a lack of employment opportunities. On the one hand, women's education is growing rapidly, but the job market is not absorbing them. There is a large section of educated, unemployed women, and it's also indicated by the large number of dowry cases. I won't go into this, but I'm just trying to place in context that fact that in the past few years, 5 years, etc., there is the figures of women in employment in STEM fields is not going up. When I examined these figures 10 years ago, it was still better. Now it is static, or it seems to show a declining trend. So Mehrotra and Parida, in their work on stalled structural transformation, they are saying that in general, open unemployment is very high, it's rising. And this unemployment crisis has arisen because there is lack of effective demand for skilled workers in the non-farm sectors. So it is quite possible this does not augur well. STEM jobs entry level may be affected, and institutions have not filled hundreds of vacancies. Bias Watch, this is the latest data by Bias Watch on proportion of women who are in science research and teaching. And you can see in India, the figures are not very high, whereas US and UK, it is better. Still, the Bias Watch has taken the lowest figures, means the base figures in the range, but it doesn't augur very well. The percentages have not gone up in a long time. This is what I wanted to show, whereas these other countries are moving towards 40% at least in some fields. Of course, biology, you will always find that there are more women than other fields. So after looking at all these figures, I was tempted to check how did I assume social science is better? We are always talking about women in science. Have we ever looked at women in social science? And thanks to this talk, I went and checked that out. And I find that it's not any better in India. So we have a very high level of enrollment of women in social sciences. And almost for 50% of PhDs in social sciences are earned by women. But at all levels of tenured positions, there are fewer women. And there are the 24% full professor includes all disciplines. We don't have discipline-wise breakup. Whereas in US, it is slightly better in the social sciences. They have nearly 30% full professors in social sciences. So 50% doctorates, 30% full professors is a good balance. So it shows that in these developed countries, the women not entering STEM, there is a disciplinary discrimination. They are there in social sciences in better numbers than in STEM. In India, the discipline doesn't matter, science or social science. In general, their progression after a certain point is weak, which proves my point of scientism and familism. And I was also a bit shocked to find that only 15% women have won Lifetime Achievement Award of the Indian Sociological Society in the past 5 decades. This brings us to leadership positions. Here again, you find that the Europe and the US have done better. So till now, we saw the first 3 career markers like enrollment, doctorates, tenure positions. These other conservative countries were doing slightly better. But when it comes to leadership positions, the picture is tilted. These very same countries, which did very well in that respect, are doing badly here. So you have, but there are some countries who are doing well on both sides. I'll come to it in a minute. So countries, again, the socialist countries and the Latin American countries have more women in leadership positions than India. So what are the figures? This is a table showing leadership positions, presidents of National Academy of Science, membership of high-level decision-making bodies. This is, you can see Italy and Portugal in the range 12 and 14%. France always is showing a smaller number, but Germany, UK, Sweden, Bulgaria and Norway have such a large percentage. More than men, there are women who are leading all these national science academies. Whereas look at India. India is an abysmal 9% here. Only 9% of Indian women have membership of national academies. We are, and China is lower than us, but this is where you can see the difference. Can I take another 10 minutes to finish?
Yeah, sure.
So if you look at the UNESCO science report about percentage of women who are university vice chancellors, Brazil, South Africa, and Argentina have reasonably good numbers. USA has 23%. India has only 6.67% women as vice chancellors. All of us know that its vice chancellorship in India is a highly politicized appointment. And just as you can, and it requires a lot of lobbying, political affiliation, etc. So it's very difficult. It's expected that you will not find women in these higher positions. But one exception I want to draw your attention to is in India, surprisingly, you have women who are leading in technology missions. The Department of Space, for instance, while it has only 10.5% women scientific staff, it has 8 women as deputy directors and 30 women as divisional heads. And they have reached very great heights mid-career. And some names they are also quite popular. So if the launch and deployment of GSAT-12, a communication satellite in 2011, is attributed to project director T.K. Anuradha. And you had mission director Pramoda Hegde and operations director Anuradha Prakashan. In Valarmati 2012, she headed the RISAT-1 radar imaging satellite in Tamil Nadu, from her village. Tessie Thomas, we all know about the Agni program. Recently, you have a CSIR director. I also was curious about this Mars Orbiter mission, or MOM, which had many junior women scientists and the junior cadre, and who said for them making a satellite was like making a baby. So that is the so the point. How is it that in technology missions women are able to attain leadership positions, be team leaders, and deliver goods on time? When I was talking to Professor Godbole, who is a physicist, she mentioned that technology missions have specific goalposts and they have concrete rules, which there is no ambiguity there. So assessment is straightforward. So women's achievements are visible, directly shown, and they deliver the goods. So whereas you have a lot of bias creeping in, where in academics and pure sciences, where the rules of authorship, research, etc., are a little ambiguous. I'll come to it in a minute. So this space achievements are the only exception. That's what I wanted to show in technology missions and concrete projects. But otherwise, when you see coveted awards earned by women in STEM fields, it's really bad. With just 3.32% of women have earned the Bhatnagar Award for Science in the past 6 decades. And if you look at the Nobel Prize situation, it's slightly better, but not anything to be happy about. It's 9.4% of women have received the Nobel Prize for Science. But other awards like Biosciences Award, just 2 out of 24 women have received it. However, I want you to notice the fact that the Fields Medal in math, it's the highest award in math, has been received by 2 women in all these years. But both of them are non-white women. They are neither from the US nor from Europe. Mariam Mirzakhani is from Iran, and now Mariana Vyazovska is from Ukraine, this recent. That itself is interesting for us to know that the Fields Medal has not has been won by someone from a nation or a Muslim majority country. Now, having looked at these 5 levels, entry, doctorates, tenured positions, and leadership positions, coveted awards, we see how the picture has tilted and how these countries are improving their enrollment rates. There is a lot of work on the organizational dimension, which is the second dimension I mentioned in the beginning. Many studies are there. A lot of them find that public funded science is more inclusive, though MAHE, Manipal Academy of Higher Education, is considered to be exceptional with 40% of women at all levels. I'll come to it. In fact, the book A Braided River says that such institutions should be consulted, and it must be seen how they are ensuring in their recruitment and other policies that they have such a high participation of women in most of the subjects and at all levels. But generally, otherwise, there's a lot of literature on the reason organizational factors that lead to the lowered participation of women or their barriers to their upward mobility. One is the preponderance of men in decision-making committees, male-centric work environments in which heroic and individualistic achievements are prioritized and showcased rather than institutional work. So earlier, Karuna Chanana said that male scientists, they focus on academic activities that promise greater national and international visibility, in contrast to women who take on academic responsibilities like teaching and research supervision that are not visible, and that women have fewer informal networks and cliques in gaining access to opportunities within the organization. And then there's a lot of work on salaries within the academy. Bias Watch has also shown how conference participation and of women is very low. In many conferences, there are hardly any women, and therefore their visibility and access to leadership positions and awards is also affected. I want to add that in the Indian situation, the bureaucracy is again a familistic influence of the familism and the hierarchy you can find in the bureaucracy. Namrata Gupta has written about it in Current Science, where she says that Scientists in national laboratories think of themselves like another government employee, and they want to have a desire to wield bureaucratic power. So there's this hierarchical culture of Indian society. It's also replicated in the bureaucracy with the scientific and the administrative staff. They are excessively respectful of those in power. They want to have contacts with the powerful. And in a hierarchical culture, seniors get things done easily. And in India, where there are several bureaucratic procedures for funding and purchase of things for the lab, which involve interaction with admin staff, most of whom are men, and are often ridden with a lot of inefficiency. Junior women scientists may face harassment or feel excluded in doing this work. I think this is also true, could be true of senior women scientists, because a lot of these problems are addressed through informal interaction. You go sit with the staff, have a cup of tea, get your work done or your paper passed. This kind of engagement cannot be done by women. So they are unable to counter hierarchy and structure through informal interaction. And some of these surveys show that male colleagues find it difficult to work under a woman boss. Sometimes women scientists believe that they are not working to their full potential. So there's a lot of work on productivity, etc. I won't go in detail. Based on the sample size or whether they are studying a particular field of science, different contradictory results have been brought about, because Vinita Bal's study of 2004 said that women had just 14.5% top scientific publications. It was small for their representation in the field. Whereas Neelam Kumar and Namrata Gupta find that women's average productivity was as good as the men. And in fact, they published more mid-career, yet they were not in editorial boards or were not appointed to leadership positions. There is a more recent study on the productivity puzzle, shows it's a comprehensive longitudinal study. It has examined 1.5 million gender-identified authors between 1955 and 2010, covering 83 countries, including India, and 13 disciplines. And they found they are highlighting 2 points. One is the participation of women has increased in science over the years, but in the past 60 years, but their productivity on the whole has reduced compared to a stage where that participation was not as much. Secondly, if though women produce as many papers as men annually, the total publications were less because they had a smaller career tenure. The length of their career was smaller than men, and there was higher dropout rate among women at some point in their career. So that led to total paper production was less, though annually they were writing as many. This book, The Braided River, it's a sample study of 220 CVs, 110 from men and 110 from women, from 4 institutes of eminence, where you can see Mahe has a good participation of women in all levels. This report or book highlights 3 things. One is this, the unexplained gap between earning PhD and getting a faculty position is higher among women. Second is that a large proportion of women scientists had been getting merit-based scholarship from the school. They were very good students compared to men who just half the amount of men who did well in the school. But whereas in their career, the men had greater foreign work experience than women. So the authors are trying to show the fact that women having more scholarship indicates that they had to work harder to convince family and boost their own self-confidence to enter the career the way they did. And the fact that there are fewer among foreign work experience could possibly be because of social norms against mobility of women. But a recent study points out that 65% of JRF is being cleared by men. So the authors are showing how early career women do very well to enter the field, but later it is getting tilted. Otherwise, a career age and other things are fairly equal. So all these studies point to the fact that bias comes into play when rules are vague. A very renowned study by Veneres and Wohl, 1997, in Sweden, shows that in a recruitment for a medical research council, the success rate for women was just 7%. And while analyzing the scores, they found there's a mismatch between the parameter of scoring and the rank given to judge competence. It was found that young women had to be 2.5 times more productive to get to the same competence score. So such deep and analytical studies have come out in the rest of the world, and they are being shared. And thereby it is making a difference, because in countries like Sweden, now they are ensuring that 30% of membership to committees are by women. People are sensitized to these kind of issues like nepotism and sexism. Another study in the US says women are credited less in science than women. And the scientists, respondents mentioned that the lack of voice in a group is one of the issues. And this is particularly acute because in joint work, joint scientific research, there is a lack of clarity with respect to authorship rules. And it reinforces organizational structure, because rules are often determined by seniors who are mostly men, and they are governed by personal relationships and idiosyncratic preferences, which reportedly led to disagreement. So in such situations, you can see that bias can play a role, and it is almost difficult to detect it where the rules are not very clear and they are subject to negotiation. So I come to the last part of the presentation as to what kind of explanations have been given. The feminists, the three things that discrimination, difference, and subordination are three different approaches within feminism. So the question that has been asked is, should the aim of our interventions be to give women equal opportunities to compete for status, power, and prizes held mostly by men? Or should we question the positions themselves? Should they be changed? It's not just change the sex of the person occupying them, but you should question the ways these organizations are run or positions themselves. So the feminists who belong to the discrimination category, they believe that inequality is not a conspiracy. It is custom, culture, and stereotypes among which are found among both the sexes. So their predominant preoccupation is to stamp out unconscious and direct discrimination through policy, education, and advocacy. They are known as liberal feminists. The socialist feminists who advocate that women are being subordinated, they are subject to domination by men. For several years, everywhere in the world, it is because with the advent of private property, where women and men are equally contribute to work, the inequality is not found that much. But in societies where private property has come to exist and titles to private property are held by men, women also become part of some kind of a property. So there's a lot of work on that. I won't go in detail. But basically, the socialist feminists who stress on the subordination of women, they say also argue natural difference is not a reason. It's just that people have been socialized, and their aim is to create an androgynous society where men and women can do any of these tasks. And to some extent, their views has borne result, as you can see from the socialist societies, the way the participation is reflected. Thirdly, you have difference feminists who think that men and women are basically different. Motherhood and other things are important. So don't clamor for equality, but think of complementarity. Accept what and work for complementarity. So Crowley and Himmelwell present this in their book. But so this whole debate about whether there is a natural difference between men and women, This you find happens a lot in the West, as I told you. Even the feminists who are contesting them, engage with biology. But scholars like Andre Bete, who is a sociologist, he thinks that it's very difficult to prove natural inequality. You can't say some people are differently endowed, whether racially or in gender way, it's difficult to prove. And there is and you look at the variety of cultural and societal variation. So it is not possible to prove. And the differences within men and within women are so greater than the differences between men and women. So it is very difficult to establish any correspondence between natural and social inequalities. Most of them are caused by social and cultural factors, which we just saw, familism and scientism. And Andre also points out that we think that individualist society emphasizing on competition lead to equality, but he says too much of competition also leads to inequality, because a competitive society values success and it puts down people who are not successful. So if women have to be as successful as men to show that they are endowed. Otherwise, there is a vicious cycle of naturalism, a measurement showing that they have low IQ, etc., so on and so forth. Whereas in familism, you find that cooperation, it's not competition oriented. It is more of cooperation and docility that is valued. And this is also true of the culture of academic institution. Independence will not be encouraged beyond a point. Aggressive pursuit of career by women is discouraged, dismissed, or excluded. And women also might be found to reduce professional ambitions mid-career once they've reached a work and life balance. And in this respect, you find that India is more conservative than other countries in South Asia, Latin America, Malaysia, and Albania. So about the gender and the methods of science, I won't go into it deeply. I will probably discuss this if I'm answering questions, because I will be exceeding time. There are nice researches by feminists to point out what are the issues or problems in clinical trials which lead to faulty results. So as to the measures, like I told you, in the Indian context, public safety, transport, creches, all the things that will improve women's labor force participation has to be emphasized. Many scientists have said they want age relaxation, the non-academic infrastructure like housing, transport, medical help, flexibility in contracts. And feminist women scientist groups and voluntary associations have to emerge everywhere in Eastern Europe, in Europe and the US. All the science associations have women's groups, and they act as pressure groups for policy change. They take up issues with the government. They ensure that the committees are balanced. There are enough number of women in the committee. So, and it seems to have borne fruit, as you can see. And an efficient administration of funds to reduce harassment by male admin staff, and creation of spaces for greater interaction among scientists would go a long way in improving the work environment for women. I think transparency in promotion and recognition of merit can be ensured only if screening and selection committee constitute 30% women. This has to be demanded just as affirmative action activists are demanding observation to avoid bias in selection of candidates, caste-based bias. Gender should also be brought onto the table, and screening and selection committees must constitute a significant number of women members and observers to ensure that there is no bias in the assessment. These are but few suggestions. There are a whole lot of recommendations by many reports that have been submitted, and they are available for public scrutiny. So I will stop here. Thank you, and I look forward to your comments.
Thank you, Professor Sujatha, for the highly informative talk. The session is now open to questions. Yeah, maybe I will start. Right. So in the beginning, you were talking about the highly skewed ratio in the enrollments in the universities in the US, which was about 12% for the women and 7.3% in England. So it's a very naive question. I hope it is not reflecting the gender ratio to some extent. Is it so? The gender ratio in the population?
No,
No,
it is
not at all. I mean, not even partially. That has been taken care of.
That has been taken care of.
And also, you also mentioned that the enrollments of women candidates in private institutions as well as institutions of world repute like the IITs, there the enrollments is less compared to the central and the state universities. Has it got to do anything with the financing by the parents? I mean, is it so that the parents are willing to finance their male children more than the female ones, and that is the reason probably, if I understand, the expenses in the central and the state universities would be lesser compared to the private institutions and the institutions of world repute. So does it reflect?
There could be a host of reasons. One is the amount parents are willing to invest. Second, the parents may not be willing to send their daughters. See, state universities are nearby to send them to central universities. I have personally observed a math department students in a regional place. Students from remote villages, the girls do come to study, and they have to take a bus and come. So not all of them can afford to go and stay in the hostel in a central university. So even state universities that way could be difficult, but you can see more girls and people from also reserved categories in state universities more benefiting education. So access, transport and safety, sending the girls away to a new place could also be one of the reasons. But these things have to be probed
systematically so that we reached the conclusion and what exactly is the factor,
yes,
which is driving this imbalance. Okay. Other questions?
Preeti
has a question.
Yeah, I think there was one person before me, Gayatri. Maybe Gayatri, you can go ahead.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor, for that insightful lecture. It was very interesting. The question I want to ask about is about the variation of like the percentage of women across disciplines in the STEM career disciplines such as mechanical engineering. When it comes to engineering, among the engineering, you see a very less number of women doing mechanical engineering as compared to, say, computer science engineering. Yes. How do you see this variation in India through these lens of scientism and familism? Is it scientism taking over familism according to what your presence is? How do you see this? How do you see this variation?
That is called horizontal segregation. That means even in STEM fields, women are not found, don't choose all the subjects, or they are not found in subjects like mechanical, civil engineering, industrial engineering, anywhere in the world except the East European countries. Even in India, it's very low. It's only in Bulgaria, Hungary, East Europe, you can find a good number of women in mining, geology, and mechanical engineering. In general, it is low. So, and within medicine, you have a horizontal segregation of fewer women in neurosurgery and cardio surgery than in radiology or other fields. So this is across the world, it is happening. And whether it is what are the reasons by which certain disciplines like industrial engineering or mechanical engineering are not taken by women will be different. Though the same phenomenon occurs throughout the world, the reason why it is occurring can vary from country to country. There maybe interviews have to be conducted, we have a lot of quantitative data out there, like what I presented, but there are very few qualitative studies. The Niti Aayog study or the Braided River has few interviews. So we need to have more qualitative studies where people interview the scientists themselves or talk to women who are making these choices, and then find out the reason for that. But the most commonly stated reason in the medical field is that women want to ensure that they are not having to go and do the duty at untimely hours. If you do neurosurgery, they want to balance work and career, so they will choose fields like radiology, or the family would force them to choose these things. So another thing the Braided River suggests is that we can't make out whether the women themselves are voluntarily taking such decisions, or they are suggested, coerced to take such decisions. It might be a bit of both. We don't have the percentages, but those are the kind of studies that are required to explain the horizontal segregation. But in India, it is being, if you look at the latest 2021 AISHE report, even fields like aeronautic engineering, there's a small proportion of women. It is not zero. Of course, mechanical and civil is not does not have that much, but earth sciences, geology, aeronautical engineering, and all, now you can see a certain percentage of women. So it could change.
Thank you.
I hope I answered your question.
Thank you for the answer. Thank you. Yes.
Arunima, did you want to check YouTube first?
Yeah, there are no questions.
Okay.
And sorry, just to Gayatri, whether it is familism or scientism, it could be both. That's what I'm in the Indian context. It could be both. It's not whether they can do the work or they have the ability to understand. It is also could be that they would choose better to balance both. So the same phenomenon, as I told you, can have different reasons.
Ma'am, hello.
Yes, please.
Yes,
Yeah,
Tanya.
ma'am, first of all, thank you for the very interesting and insightful lecture. So just adding on to what you gave as an answer to Gayatri. So could one reason among many be the nature of job market with regard to the respected discipline? Could there be one reason among many? The nature of job market.
It's one of the factors, but not the only one. That is why this phenomenon is so intriguing. See, in the ICT, India Information Technology, you can see that there are a large number of women at till the PhD level in a way that you don't see in other countries. Also, you don't find that in East Europe. But you can say, is that connected to the job market? A large number of women taking to engineering, and they get assured jobs. Also, because software industry in general has led to a push in this part of the world. India has been seen as software capital and all that. But it's not just job availability. They're not going to certain fields. In America, not choosing math or not going for engineering, though it will give them an assured job. It says something. That's what I said. It could be a barrier. In India, similarly, not going for industrial engineering, hardly any women neurosurgeons. A particular field it is not necessarily connected to the job market. In familistic societies, the choices made by women are not always connected to the job market. Is the point. This might change, but at the moment, they are choices made by a different set of factors.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. And ma'am, one other question. The data that you showed on the presentation, which was Bias Watch India's data. So I think I might have missed on it. Does this data include all the dimension, like the dimension of entry-level applicants of women, and the participation and the upward mobility aspect of it also?
No,
is it inclusive of all these dimensions?
No. The Bias Watch data, I showed only one table. The Bias Watch data shows, at least on their website, this particular source, they are giving you discipline-wise how many women are in tenured positions, research or teaching positions in various science disciplines in a select set of Indian institutions. And what is reflected in the table, they give you the base value. That means the lowest value, whichever institution has the lowest numbers, and what is the highest number, it is there in their figure. But the table shows the base value, it's the lowest in for that particular. And they also give you statistics on women in various conferences, which is very interesting.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, Preeti?
Yeah. So Arunima, if you have to leave at some point, you can, yeah. So we just have 5 minutes, right? So yeah. So very quickly, so this was an excellent talk, Professor Sujatha. I think you actually made a lot of things very clear. I think there was a lot of confusion in in our heads about, this scientism versus familism. I think that is we've been kind of, at least also in our group, doing the discussion on scientism, that part of it. And we've kind of, done exercises which are probably also being done in the US without any, completely ignoring feminism, basically. And so when it comes to feminism, we kind of feel very helpless, and we don't even know how to even start, addressing that. So how do you even start addressing that in the Indian context? I mean, because I think we've been doing a couple of things not the right way in some sense, because it's not that we don't have enough women coming into physics. I think we have a lot of them. We already see that in our departments. But if this feminism, I think that looks like a very important thing.
Yes. One of the reasons, if we say we have a leaky pipeline or we have the same problems, our interventions may not be effective. That's the reason I'm putting this forth. Right. It's not that we should not intervene at the school stage. We should, but for a different reason. In the Indian context, role models of women scientists inspire young girls to think that they have a career. Career is more important than marriage. I mean, they can still have both, or that is something they can aspire for. So the thrust of the school, because in countries like Hungary, they are aggressively working at the level of school, the women scientists associations. But we should work, but we should demand more. I mean, basic infrastructure has to be good. There is a great demand for education among girls. In Madhya Pradesh, in a tribal predominant area, I found that girls cycled 9 kilometers one way to attend a higher college. Though that kind, they were members from tribal communities who are first generation learners. So this kind of demand is there. The quality of teaching is another thing. So the suggestions I would make is that enrollments are okay, but we have to work on that by bringing more diverse people into it. Infrastructure, facilities, safety, transport, etc., which will benefit. But within organizations, I would think, also based on my personal experience, that the institutional protocols should be strengthened to ensure that women in the recruitment, postdoc selections, selection for faculty positions, leadership, vice chancellor committees, director committees should have a certain proportion of women. We should demand the women scientists associations and feminist groups have to become pressure groups. And demand a certain proportion of women must be, the committee should have this proportion of women in the selection committee, or they should have observers, like you have, a nominee, president nominee, you have in other selection committees. We should have observers, women who are looking at this, taking notes. Thirdly, we have to have more qualitative studies to look at how bias works at the higher level. With self-ejection, it'll be a bit of everything, but we have to find out that is where the studies are missing, and we can engage with that.
Right. Yeah. Thank you so much. Arunima, did you want to, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, so I think we can maybe stop the session now.
There's one question on the
Yeah.
chat box.
Yeah. Maybe we can take that and maybe we can close.
I have a basic question with regard to the talk. Do you think there is already some unconscious gender gap that is being inculcated among people from the very young age in a school textbook? Yes. Yes, I mean, how you portray, this has been discussed by feminists, a lot of scholars, that how school textbooks portray gender roles does have a lasting impact on people's mind. It's not that they are written in stone, but unless you have occasions by which this is confronted or changed, maybe when they come to college and see women teachers, etc., but still the basic images that are created at a young age are found to affect. So this has been discussed and written. I'm not saying that's the only reason. I'm saying that apart from the images, there are actual physical and social restrictions on women pursuing a career independently or traveling to faraway places or thinking twice about marriage, etc. So those are also, apart from, even if women choose to do certain things, there are certain barriers, either external barriers in the form of, responsibilities, etc., or possible that there are internal barriers also. Internal barriers are also produced by cultural stereotypes which they may have imbibed. We call it socialization, how they have been raised, what images they have been. And there are many studies on this, more in the Western context, though.
Okay, I think, okay. Arunima had to leave. I think, I'm not sure if she's still around, but so let me take this opportunity to thank you once again. I really, I hope that we can continue this conversation, because I think there are many, many things which I have kind of, I mean, put so clearly. It's actually very illuminating. I think we kind of get an idea about where we should attack and where we should focus our energies. So I hope to be in touch with you, and let's hopefully maybe next time you actually come here and give a talk. That will be fantastic. So thank you again.
Thank you so much. I should thank you, for requesting me to give this talk, because after this I went and looked at the social science data and found that was not any better. So I'm discussing with some friends to say that we should do a survey. I never considered myself as working on women's studies. I'm a sociologist of knowledge. I work on other things. But since this is so stark, I thought I should look at the social science situation alone. I should also look at the social science situation, and also at the role of civil society. Associations play a key role in policy initiatives. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, I'll close the meeting now. Okay. Bye everyone.